There we go. I'm clicking the button, but it's not working.
No, apparently I'm still learning the new interface. My fault.
Hey, that is okay. That is a beautiful shade of orange. Where is that coming from? All right. How's everybody doing?
I don't know, but my video display looks like a major coat of bears with the orange and black between you and Christine.
I know. I think that my camera is acting up, I think, but that's okay. Now I don't have anything to present, but if we do have at some point something to go through, I can definitely jump into the system and show it.
No,
but I think that this
did
was
you get my email?
I did get your email, yes.
Awesome.
Yep.
So let's just start going through the questions that Calvin sent over.
Okay, Hasso, you had 4 inquiries. I'm not sure where they came from, but do you want to go ahead and open up with those first 4? It came from the community somewhere. And then we'll dive into the ones that were thrown in online.
That's right. They came from Logical.
Okay. Gotta find my emails.
I got it here.
I got it. First one. What wisdom and advice would you give to users who are just starting out with Epicor and wanting to customize it, or for those who have more experience and want to stay current with the latest technology that Epicor uses?
I'll jump in on this one first, I guess, and we can take turns or something. I don't know. I would say, if you're a novice, the best thing you can do is read. And I know that's tedious, but get involved with the community. Join EUG, join EPI users that help, and read the manuals. It is tedious, but it is the best way to get up to speed quickly. In terms of the technology that Epicor uses, obviously you can become familiar with the framework that Epicor uses, the .NET framework. Learn C# if you want to start customizing with code. But the most important part of it all is to read and understand the Epicor framework and Epicor architecture. And if you have no experience whatsoever in manufacturing or ERP systems, then I suggest you go sit with each of the departments in your company and spend a day with them. That's going to be a huge help so that you understand what the flow of the system looks like, because you can be very technical, you can be a magician and a wizard at C#, but if you do not understand ERP or manufacturing, you don't know what a BOM is, you don't know what a customer represents, you're going to have a tough time helping your company. So that would be my advice.
Hasso, anything to add?
Same thing. Just go through the user's guides, download them, and you don't have to read them page by page. Just at least read them cover to cover, but skim through it. And eventually, when you need something, your brain you will notice that, oh, I saw that somewhere. I know it can do that, and then you can find the resource. That's kind of it. That's kind of how you start. Just read, and just like Jose, if you don't understand quote to cash, then it's a little bit, that's actually the difficult part. It's easy to add a button and do something, but if you don't understand what you're doing behind the scenes and how that ties through the whole business and how it affects shipping and receiving and the users on the shop floor, then it's makes it a little bit harder. I think Jose and we both started smaller companies that I did, at least. I had at least 20, 30 employees, and so I was engaged with the shop floor all the time. And I just walk out to the shop floor, and they kind of show me how they're using it, and that's where I learned most of the processes.
Christine?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that I don't do the coding, but the bridge between what the business actually does and what you coded or what you're trying to do with the customization is huge. If you don't know that, you can put whatever buttons and whistles you want on the form, but you need to understand where exactly is the users having an issue, or what is it? Why do they want it? Sometimes they want things just because they think it's good. Doesn't mean it always makes sense to do it either.
And then we've got, and Jason recommends make sure you understand the data architecture, and also don't assume that you have to do something with a customization. See if There's a base part of the product that can actually do it before you go wasting the time into customization just to find out, ooh, check this box, and it would have done it for you.
Yeah, that's a huge issue. Yeah, make sure you ask why. Why? And why can't you use it the way it is? Part of the question was like, I want to customize it, and that should really be the last resort, right? It shouldn't be I want to customize it. It should be only I have no choice but customize it. But try to exhaust all the ways to do it without customization.
Make sure you know how Epicor thinks you should use the product or the form before you start customizing.
Yeah, because there's a maintenance to upgrade and uplift and maintain. Once you customize special reports, you create a copy of a report, RDL. Epicor does fix their original RDLs and tweaks calculated fields, so you'd benefit from none of that. So it's always smile when someone says, let's just modify these 30 reports. We just want to extend the description field. That's it. And then you have 30 things that you have to maintain just because of a description field, and then they fix other issues. Like there was like AR form in one version didn't have the tax deducted from the grand total. So you would send sales orders, request for quote, or is it sales order acknowledgement with the wrong totals, but you don't catch that because you probably make a copy somewhere in 10.1500. Then as you're upgrading, you're not really rewriting that from scratch. You just keep using the same report or the RDL and tweaking it. But at some point, you should just kind of say, okay, let's throw this away, copy it again, and kind of merge your customizations back into it. So,
to your point, Hasso, I would recommend also go work in every department, even if it's just a day a week. If you can dedicate 2 days, okay, Monday I'm going to go be a salesperson. Then Tuesday I'm going to be a customer service person, but don't do it just once. Do it for a couple weeks so that you thoroughly understand what they're doing and how they're using the system. And then ask, why are you doing it this way? After you get to understand what they're doing.
Yeah.
Give yourself the time to learn what's going on, and then ask, how can I do it better? Why am I doing it this way?
Yep.
And Michelle Thompson has a point to that. She's found it much harder to get out on the shop floor with the second ERP implementation than it was with the first one years ago. It's important to know what's going on with the users and how they're using the system. You can't assume you know how things are being done just because you saw it years ago. Yep. She has to continually remind management that she needs that time to go out there and know how the system's being used by people.
Yep.
Well, plus they're going to change over time how they use it because, oh, I found a cool little trick, and if I do it this way, it's faster. They didn't know they were killing the accounts receivable department at the same time because now they have to go fix things, but you have to be continuous. It's not something you just learn once and you're done.
And Lori says, make sure you include accounting in that department you visit list. It's easy to forget somebody. You want to visit every department.
Oh, come on, Lori, you'll just journal entry it.
Journal entry.
And Mark says, you can't even assume they're doing it the way you trained them yesterday.
Yeah,
that is absolutely true.
And I'll admit, it's a different world at Codabears. When we went live on the software, it was no longer, this is how we teach people to use it. It's like, oh my gosh, we got to use it too. And that's a totally different perspective when we were consultant on the outside telling people how to use it, but now we got to use it and make it work for business as well efficiently. And that has given us a different perspective too.
So, and the last thing I can just add, just if you understand the framework, what Epicor is using, like Infragistics, and then on top of that, the entity framework and Link, and especially most developers that I've seen, they come into Epicor not even know what WinForms data binding is. Like, well, they think that's just an Epicor thing. It's not just an Epicor, it's just WinForms. So kind of just buy some Amazon old books, .NET 2.0, whatever you can find on data binding and WinForms, and understand that you don't work with the controls, you work with the data, and the data will refresh no matter how many controls you have binded to it. And I think that's the biggest mistake I see, that they just assume that's an Epicor thing. It's actually just pure.NET. Buy books, even if they're old, just skim through it. What's data binding? What's WinForms? What's Infragistics documentation are all they're all online, so you can download all their demos and just get familiar at least. An entity framework.
Also, that flows into question number 2, based on your knowledge of what's to come with Epicor and Kinetic and customizations. What direction would you tell people to go with learning new programs and languages? And that is, get books, read up on the technology and the framework.
Yeah. I think for the Kinetic part, I'm not sure yet. I mean, I know what technologies they're using it, but I think I think they still have some work ahead of them to figure out, like they say, no code. Do you really need to learn code? And now most people are learning C#. Well, are you going to do TypeScript and JavaScript and HTML and CSS? I don't know what their final product is. I haven't seen the full roadmap, but just kind of keep up to date, I guess, with kind of the Microsoft stack. And if you care what Epicor is using for Kinetic, it's I think they're using Kendo UI, so you can also go Kendo UI documentation and kind of see how all that works. So you can use all of that without Epicor. It's not Epicor is just kind of taking all these frameworks and building something that works well and with their ERP system. But in the end of the day, it's just frameworks that you can find online.
But come on, Hasso, that has to be fun with Kendo, because that sends us right back to Progress Software.
Yeah,
that's right. We had to get back to Progress somehow.
Oh,
yeah, they do. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I would suggest that you at least get your beak wet with the web frameworks. Angular, JavaScript, Node. Get to know those things. You probably won't have to get in there too deep with Epicor, but it is good to know it. It is a good knowledge base to have so that you understand how it works. I mean, Kinetic is all going to be based on those type of technologies. It's going to be eventually all web-based. So even if you don't have access to writing the code, it would help to understand how it works so that you can work around the limitations if you have to. And C# is not going away. The backend is staying in C# as far as being able to discern. So you'll still need that for BPMs, and you'll still need that for any server-side logic.
And you're still a professor of that, aren't you, Jose?
I am actually. This semester, I am teaching Node, Angular, TypeScript, and MongoDB. So if you want to come take my class.
What happened to Java?
Oh, I taught Java last semester. I'm
okay.
changing it up.
That's good. Enough of NetBeans.
Eclipse. We don't use Net.
Eclipse. Okay.
We got a couple comments. Michelle's suggests doing continuous training and get people to understand what the other departments are doing so that you break down those silos. If people understand what choices they're making and how that affects the other departments, that helps people understand. Check that little checkbox. It saves Nancy down the line 2 hours of work.
Yep.
The same thing, but if you allow the silos to form, they're going to build walls between the departments and they're not going to work together. And that's the opposite way of ERP.
I think that's the biggest thing, the takeaway we see every time we do a testing project is bringing everybody together and meet together on a call or in a conference room, is to see and get that, oh, I didn't know that if I did this, this affects you this way.
Yep.
That is huge to remember.
And then Pete has a follow-up. I found that after understanding why, finding out what other areas are affected and have a meeting with all the areas to discuss any changes before you go into doing a customization. Even data changes such as adding a change of a ship via. Do you really need to do that? Is it important, or are you missing something along the way? How does that affect the other people? And I think we've got, let's go ahead and finish up Hasso's questions, and then we've got a follow-up scheduling question from Tam here. So Hasso had, what new things, programs, programming languages, and other things are you trying to learn yourself, Hasso and Jose? How do you know what will be the most useful in your job? Pull out that crystal ball. Come on.
Well, I just kind of covered it, but I'm learning Node, Angular, React, NoSQL databases like MongoDB. So I mean, the world is moving to a web-based approach to almost everything, including ERP. Some would say, unfortunately. So you kind of have to keep up with that. So what would be useful in your job? Hopefully those things. Just kind of keep an eye. I like to keep an eye out to in the community, not in Epicor community, but in the technology in general, and just kind of keep up to speed with whatever is popular. So that's why I decided to go that route and start learning some of the web framework stuff, because I saw Kinetic coming down the road, and also I have to teach this stuff next semester, so I had to learn it myself so I could teach it.
Also, and Christine.
Go ahead. Oh, for me, so I used to before .NET, I used to be a web developer for 5 years. So with PHP and all those frameworks that I don't know if anyone remembers Zend, Big Zend and Symfony, and so I kind of learned a lot of that. And then now with .NET and being it's a little bit harder. The older you get, the family grows. It's really harder for me to keep up, and so I haven't touched Angular since Angular 2, so I definitely need to brush up. But right now, I think what I'm learning the most is obviously how to automate processes and how do you handle. I think not from programming languages. I think the biggest thing that for me in the last 3 years was just learning change management, ITIL, or whether you're doing Scrum. Just how do you build an ERP team and implement ERP at larger corporations, because it's easy when you're a single plant and a single company, but when you have 30 companies and 40 plants, it becomes a little bit difficult. So I think what I'm still learning is not so much programming languages, but a lot more change management, like how to document your changes, how to I forgot what they're called. The
customizations. Why did you write it? Who was it for? What business department?
Yep. So,
Christine, anything to add?
I don't do programming-ish, so for me, I don't have to necessarily learn any of those, but it's still, I need to keep up with what Epicor's doing. I need to understand how the App Studio works. I need to understand what the capability of Epicor is, so that I know how to communicate that to our developer. So that we both know, we're both on the same page. Otherwise, the business is going to just require or ask for, again, the world. They may not going to get it.
And Simon suggests surround yourself with good people and good leadership. Learn from your coworkers.
Yep.
Okay. And Hasso's fourth question here. Is there anything in your Epicor career that you wish you would have done differently? Like maybe use Infor or no. Or something that didn't work that you learned from and would advise against doing?
How about we let Jose go first? Let me think about that one.
Well, I was going to go with the whole cheesy line of mistakes help you grow.
Yeah.
So no.
Yeah, same.
No, I would say make your mistakes. Just don't do them in production. But no, honestly, I mean, anything that has been a mistake has helped me figure how something works. So be careful where you make your mistakes, and don't work in production. I guess if there was anything that I wouldn't do is don't develop in production. Don't make your changes in production. But outside of that, I say make mistakes, because that's how you learn.
Say no more often.
Yes, they know a
I
lot.
think the biggest mistake I always made is at the beginning when you don't know the system, and let's say someone you know they want to customize everything, and you're like yes, okay, yes, and assuming that your manager knows the system, or sometimes you have to educate them and like, hey, did you know Epicor can do this? And before you customize, sometimes you go do the research. If they say, oh, I looked into this, I heard Epicor cannot do this, go just double check, because sometimes just another set of eyes. Instead of saying yes all the time, say no more often. Try to get leadership to support you to get the Epicor out of the box working properly first before you go customize. And sometimes, like, do you really need something? I guess just work on the process. We have a lot of people that I always say, they put in something, an employee, and then you do it, and then another employee says, I don't want the pink color, I want blue color, and then you change it again, and you just keep going. And you just said, the biggest mistake is not having a ERP team or a process, that, and then don't bypass the process. Basically say, oh, you want this done? There's a sheet, you fill it out, I take it to the team, whether your team consists of 2 or 3 people, we review it, we approve it, or we decline it. And management should back you, saying, yeah, if you decline it, I trust you, it's declined. And you obviously you're not going to just say no, you're going to say here's why not. But just processes, I think, help a lot, and make mistakes and try things. Like,
I think it's easy also to fall into the trap that you think you know the answers.
that
So
too.
sometimes you need to go back to your users and go, can you show me how you're doing this? Or show me where this is so I can understand it. Don't be afraid to ask those questions.
Yeah.
It's too easy to go, oh, I've been working in this for 5 years, so I know what's going on. Or, oh, that's Bill. He doesn't understand the system at all. Well,
Yeah.
Bill may not understand everything, but Bill may understand really well what he does in Epicor.
Yeah. And the biggest, another biggest thing that sometimes companies, they get Epicor, they want, like, they don't want to, they would just want to make Epicor their way, like completely. They don't even want to adjust their process just a little bit. Like, yeah, how about we'll change your process? Now your operator has to do 2 things. Well, in the old system, you only had to do 1 thing. I mean, stay on the old system. We're not trying to re-implement the old system, but kind of like change your feel. It's okay to change your process. You don't always have to change the software. That shouldn't always be, let's just change the software. Sometimes it's, let's change the process. Especially when we did, when you're in a publicly traded company, you deal with segregation of duties, and then you acquire a small company, and then you tell them, well, now you need 20 people to do the job of 1 person, and then of course nobody likes that, but you shouldn't have become a publicly traded company. That's part of being a publicly traded. And but what if we give Bill 3 usernames? Nobody will know it's him. So just
give him the manager password.
Don't just bend Epicor, bend also your processes. Don't just we had I'll tell you one quick story. There was a lady at EUG when I came in 2012. I don't recall her name. She was always active, and then she disappeared. And I decided, like 2-3 years later, to follow up, saying, "Hey, I haven't seen you. Are you okay? I mean, you were always posting." And she said, "Yeah, after 8 years of trying to implement Epicor, we decided to go to another ERP system because there's too many customizations." And the lesson from that is, don't customize Epicor for your user, customize Epicor for your process. You sit down and figure out the process, and you customize for that. Don't just say, well, Kelvin likes big buttons, 14-point font.
I can't see them.
So I guess that's something I would have changed earlier on. Process, change your process first. Sometimes it's not always just about the customization, and we've always done it this way.
Okay. Let's go over to our questions that came in. What causes cross-references to pop up when placing some parts on a job or order? It's annoying, and I'd like to disable it. That's from Isaac.
Now, Isaac, I sent you a message earlier asking, and you're saying it was putting the part in the part field on the order entry. Same for the job entry, and you're not sure where it's coming from. Inside the sales management module, under setup, you're going to find a thing called part cross-reference, and you can control those. Anytime you enter a customer part number on a sales order and your Epicor part number in the part number field, Epicor makes a link and a cross-reference between the two. This is where those are coming from. So you do have the ability in 10 and forward. In versions 9 and older, you couldn't maintain those. Now you have the ability to maintain those moving forward in 10, and that's under part cross-reference setup.
Okay.
And then one thing, I don't know if they still have this bug, but I remember in E9 in was it order entry or quote entry, when you typed in, maybe you already said it, you type in a part number, and if you type in a customer cross-reference part number, like you just say test and you save, it will go and create it. So what we always did, we had to change the tab order, and I put in a different text box, and I can't remember whether I don't know if I even epi-binded it. Maybe I just copied it to like shortcut 01, and that's the only way, kind of like how I could stop it from creating those. And back then, when I was starting out, I'm sure it could have been done with a BPM, just clear out the value. So.
If you find that you have too many part cross references in there, because I have run across some people that have huge, they never knew how to turn it off, clean it, or maintain it, or they migrated from an old version up to 10 and it all came with them, you could put in a base process method directive to turn around and suppress that part cross-referencing coming up. And replace Epicor's method with your own and just put nothing in there.
Okay. This is from Pete. From our controller, is there a way to send a notification if a recurring monthly invoice has not been processed?
Pigeon.
That would require, there's nothing built in as far as I know. You could write a BPM or an Epicor function, depending on the version of Epicor you're in. But you could write a BPM, but I want to assume 600. In 600, what I would do is I would write an Epicor function that goes through and looks at any invoices that are marked as recurring, and then schedule that function to run maybe once a day and look at the last day that recurring invoice was generated. And if it falls outside of an X day range and the month, then you can send an email out or an alert of some sort. But as far as I know, I don't know that there's anything built in that I have seen to automatically send those alerts.
Similar to Jose, I would say if you're using 600 in the active homepage, just make it a BAQ and link it to a tile that's on that person's homepage. How many unprocessed recurring invoices are out there?
Yep. And correct me if I'm wrong, I think Jose, was it in 600 or 700 where you can actually create functions and schedule them? 600, yeah, it's wonderful. You could basically schedule your custom BPM. Like I want to run this code every day, every hour, and maybe that you could use to email some custom stuff as well.
We've done the active homepage tiles for some people just to show the accounting or the shipping department how many shipments are not marked shipped, or they started the packing slip but they didn't finish them, so that go in and clean them. And if there's a number on the tile, click on it and go edit it.
Yep. Most people, using the tiles is definitely another good way. It's underused, I believe. I think train your users how to use the tiles and encourage them.
Okay.
Pete's got another question out there. Is there a way to change the background color of a tab and a dock panel? He tried changing the back color, but it doesn't change. And the only thing I can think of is app styling has to be turned off. Or the use app styling is set to true, I believe.
I guess I'm wondering if it's just he wants to do it for a single tab, or he actually wants every tab, like a theme, styling the theme.
His follow-up question was, is there a way to change the background color of a group boxes without changing use app styling to false.
Yeah.
And Pete's referring to a single tab.
Oh, single tab. Well, in the properties window, no. You might have to do it. Well, obviously, if you turn off the app styling, but I don't think you can. The only way I was able to ever access a tab was through code, because you can't. You click on the tab, it's just a sheet, and I think you can change the sheet's background, but not the tabs. And you kind of have to go through the infragistics, and I think it's called Ultra Tab. Maybe you just kind of type infragistics Ultra Tab, and it'll show you all the properties. As long as you get the tab object of the sheet, and I don't know it by heart. Yeah, sometimes they put it of an object of an object of an object, and you just kind of have to find the needle, like the child of the child. And
Yeah. For a dock panel, you can do it. You have to do it in code, obviously, like Hasso said. But for a dock panel, you can just change the appearance property of the panel, and that's one line of code. I'll paste it in the chat here, and that basically just lets you change the individual background of the dock panel to whatever color you want. And that appearance object is an infragistics concept. That's how all infragistics controls get their code, or get their look rather. Unfortunately, it is kind of hit and miss on which parts of infragistics Epicor chose to use or implement. So in this case, for a particular dock panel, you can change the background color, changing the appearance. But in other instances, you changing the appearance doesn't actually do what you expect it to do. But I did just quickly test it, and it does work for a panel. But it doesn't work for, but it may not work for other reasons. So there you go. It's beautiful in red now. But yeah, like Hasso said, it's through code only, unless you disable the app styling. But when you disable app styling, you run into other problems. That I'm guessing that's the reason why he was asking that question, because disabling app styling makes the whole entire form look ugly and different.
Hello, Brandon. We saw Brandon Anderson.
You saw Brandon?
Yeah, it was on your screen. Are you watching him secretly?
What screen? Oh, he was behind that tab. That's funny. Yeah, he was in we have a Zoom running because it's his first week, so.
Yeah, and see, that's how he keeps cameras on the new hires. I saw that now.
That's funny. Yeah, but yeah, so that line of code I shared on the chat will change the background color in the panel.
And I put that out to everyone as the answer on that question too for you.
But
okay, awesome.
But again, what we always preach in the forums is don't do it.
Right. Yeah, there are very few reasons.
What's Epicor doing? Like, you don't want to be like, I guess what, don't get into this. You do it on one tab, and the users will be like, well, you did it on that screen. Can you do it here and here and here and here? And it's like, now you're customizing everything. Well, why could John's part entry have it? Why can't mine customer shipment entry have it?
Right.
You open up this can of worms. So that's. But
yeah, absolutely, there are very few reasons why you would want to change the color of a whole panel or a whole tab. Maybe to call attention to something or things like that. But if you want to do that, then use the built-in tools, right? If you want to call attention to something, you can use the required field, which automatically can turn the field ugly salmon colored. If you want to have kind of a visible alert, use the little shapes, the epi shapes, and you can turn those epi shapes pink or blue or purple or whatever color you want, but they're supported, and you don't have to mess with them in code, but rather you use enable or disable the epi shape based on whatever condition you want. Use row rules. Those are a great way of changing or alerting to a color. You can even use row rules with images to put a little guy or a little whatever next to a field that you want to call attention to. But yeah, like Hasso said, try to stay away from customizing the system to make it, blink and dance and change colors all over the place, because you're gonna hate your life every time that they want that everywhere, and it's just generally not conducive to.
Yeah, put code on one form, like you hit the save. If there's an error, shakes the form, like just changes the position. Now they want to shake all the forms. It's like, no, taking that away.
The next question, Tracy Winkleman had a question for us in Epicor E10 for receipt entry. If you enter a PO and then a pack slip different from the PO, the enter screen automatically brings in the other PO. She's tried to put a BPM and a data directive on the field to alert the user that there's a duplicate packing slip out there, but can't get the logic to come up. Any suggestions?
So is it on the receiving side?
Yes, on receipt entry.
Yep. And you type in a packing slip, right?
Well, you put in the PO number, then you type in a packing slip. It automatically pops up if it's in there.
Yep.
She's trying to alert the user that it's a duplicate packing slip before it automatically loads the form. So on the get by ID, when Epicor runs the method, put an intercept there. I'm trying on ideas there on how to stop that one, guys.
I guess my question would be, why are you using the same packing slip? Is it the vendor that are sending? Use the PO number and you put in any packing slip you want. It's just a reference field. You know, ABC 1 to 3, and some companies use date, right? They say you're going to put in YYMMDD, and it should be you can reuse the same packing slip as long as it's a different vendor, I think. But if you use
a different vendor, but not on the same PO.
Yeah.
Yes. But is there a way to pop up a dialog and say this has already been entered?
Yeah.
Are you trying to enter a new?
Yeah. So
before automatically populating the window. Is that correct, Tracy?
Yeah. So there will probably be, you just have to trace it. So I'm sure you type in the PO number, you hit tab, Epicor is going to run a method that, I don't know, I would have to trace it, probably like get POs or something. And in that pre-method directive, you would kind of check, run a query and see if there are already packet slips. And as long as you throw an exception, it should stop going forward and return your cursor back to the field. Is that correct?
Yeah, what it seems to be doing is when we put in the PO, people are accidentally putting in a duplicate packing slip. We definitely aren't doing it intentionally. And it automatically loads that packing slip, and it's allowing us to start a receipt against something that's already been received. Yep. And when I tried to do a data directive or a BPM, yep, or a method directive or a data directive, either one, on the field, I can get the true statement to fire, but if it recognizes it as a duplicate, it still fires a true statement, or it'll say, yep, this is okay. It's not actually popping up something for the false condition, unless I'm using the wrong condition. I was trying to use that if the PO existed I tried it in a query, yep, and I tried just if it was there, and both of them, if the PO already exists there, doesn't pop a statement. Only if it doesn't exist. And then it'll automatically load the PO.
Yeah. So you have a condition, but are you also throwing a message box or an exception?
I throw up a mess. I was just doing a message box for right now so that I didn't have to kick myself out with an exception.
And do you get the message box?
Only if the packing slip doesn't exist. If it does exist, it won't pop the message box. So I did a true condition and a false condition.
Yep. So you get the message box, but now what you want to do is you want to get the message box and stop them from going forward?
I would like to get the message box if it's a duplicate. I can only get the message box if it's not a duplicate. It always comes up and says your packing slip is okay.
Go ahead, Jose.
Are you firing this when you type in a packing slip number, or when are you doing the BPM?
Yes, I'm trying to do it when we put in the packing slip number and tab out of the field.
I see.
What if you turned the packing slip field into a predictive search? Then as they start typing the number, it's going to pop down and show them that number is already on file.
Oh. I've never done that, but I'll definitely look into that.
Pete Mazek put a comment out there also. They use the PO number for the pack slip number, and then they put a period in the date so that if they're multi-receiving and the vendor sends in a duplicate pack slip or over again, they just turn around and append the date to the pack slip number. Or use the PO
Okay.
number for the pack slip and the date that it came in rather than the vendor's pack slip number.
Okay. Those are all good
Predictive,
suggestions.
yeah, the predictive search may work for you because then as they're typing the packing slip number, it would pop up in the drop down that, hey, this is already on file.
And back to your BPM, it just depends what it's hard to see unless we see the screenshot. Like your condition needs to go and query the real database table. Like I think it's a ship head, ship detail. No,
Instead of the
receive
temporary table.
Yeah, because the temporary will only
receive
have the data that you're working with. It cannot go back in history and see what exists. So you have to actually query the real table and then look up, does this already exist? Then it should say yes or no, true or false.
I think that actually might be my issue because I am using the temporary table.
Yeah, that won't have everything. That will just literally have whatever you typed in, you hit tab, and that's kind of it.
Yeah, what's on the screen.
Okay, I will try that. Thank you, guys.
Yes. If it doesn't work, just email Calvin.
Wheels on the bus go round and round. Thanks.
I didn't say you weren't going to bill for it.
Hey, off of it.
No.
Okay,
Hey,
what questions do we have? I think Tam had one online. You want to go ahead and do that, friend?
So Tam asked, follow up on scheduling. What, if any, is the difference between using override material conflicts at job schedule or setting at the site maintenance level for override scheduling constraint? If I have a subcontract PO that has, I think these are multiple different questions. So let's start with the first one. What's the difference between override material constraints at the job schedule and setting at the site maintenance level override scheduling constraint?
I think that's a question for Calvin, right?
Yeah, we all
that's
vote
going
for
to be an
Calvin.
MRP and scheduling here. Go ahead and take that one offline for Tam. I'll kind of keep us on the Stump the Chump. Oh, we got you guys here. I don't want to turn around and tie up with all day.
Okay.
Let's kind of hit those, and then we can hit this in the open Q&A session right after.
Got it. John Mitchell, have you guys tested anything with extending the DB using newer SQL features like column store tables for part detail or temporal tables for part bin?
So I just had a very unfun experience with messing with the DB, and it wasn't even us. So the answer to that is stay out of the DB. But we actually have CSG. Before I got hired, we hired CSG to do a lot of customizations and custom codes, and they had the wonderful idea of creating custom custom business objects. And custom tables and all that stuff, which was delightful. And we just upgraded to 500 from 300. And during the upgrade process, Epicor does something lovely and deletes all your custom procedures and custom anything in your database.
Even the ones from CSG?
Even the ones from CSG, Calvin. So I upgraded and we're started testing and things started not working, even though we had upgraded all the CSG code. CSG upgraded their code and everything was wonderful. The code worked and everything fine, but when we tried to use any of those forms, things kept blowing up, kept blowing up. We couldn't figure out what the problem was until we went and dug into the database and we saw that every store procedure, every view, everything custom that was added to our databases just got blown to bits during the upgrade process. So I'm going back to my old saying and just stay the hell out of the database. If you want to have external queries, if you want to have external views, if you want to have anything else, I highly recommend that you do that in a separate database and then kind of link it into Epicor. But unless you want to, suffer pain I would recommend you stay out of the database as much as you can.
Yep, and set the trustworthy between the two.
Yep.
Okay.
I haven't seen anyone try and take or turn the table to one of the newer features in SQL and have it a memory resident table. I haven't heard of anyone trying to do this and being successful. Have either of you guys tried to do that?
I have not. The only thing that I did recently was I put the Epicor database in a SQL Azure managed instance, and it worked. But outside of that, I haven't tried putting it as a memory-only table.
Yeah. Yeah, Epicor, when that feature first came out, they hadn't tested it. I haven't heard any updates from the technical team to whether it's supported or not. And at the time, they said, don't do this until we figure out if it's supported.
Right. Well, yeah. So, yeah, it's not supported still, I believe, but it works if you want to play with it. But don't put it in your production system because Epicor won't support you.
Yep. Okay. Scott Lepley, hey, also, he thinks you were referring to Deb B. He previously worked at the same company and everything was a customization. So the moral of the story, change your processes when it needs to be changed, not your customizations. Scott Lepley, one danger from the BAQ gadget tiles is that the refresh interval defaults to 1 minute, and many times users don't bother changing the value. Anybody familiar with that?
Can you repeat the question? I didn't hear the list.
With the BAQ linked to the tiles, the refreshes every minute is what it defaults to. If you only need it every 15 minutes or every hour, you have to change it. Otherwise, the default goes to 1.
Got it.
So I don't know if there's a way to set it up so it defaults to 15 and then have them change it. I don't know if it's a config or if there's a way to configure that. Not sure.
From Pete, back on the changing the colors, he's trying to do a defined color to identify where he's doing customizations so that he identifies this group box as a customization, this tab's a customization.
Yep.
And
I see.
In that event, Pete, I would say put your customizations on their own tab. Do not intermingle them with Epicor's. When you upgrade, you run the risk of losing your stuff.
Yeah, stuff gets jumbled all the time. If they add new boxes or whatever, you might lose or not lose, but it's going to be painful to move stuff around. So that's a big lesson I learned a long time ago. If you have customizations that modify the UI and you are able to put them on their own tab and just call it, your company name tab, and then everything custom that your company does can live in that tab. Obviously, if you need to change original fields and move, then you can't do that. But if it's custom fields, add them in their own tab as much as you can.
Well, and you can even
how to dock the tabs.
Yeah.
And you can still take, even if you need to, if you're doing a whole bunch of fields, you can still grab those original fields from an Epicor tab, put them over onto your tab and data bind them so that they don't have to flip back and forth if that's what you're concerned about.
Right.
And Pete says, I create new group boxes and put them to the right, which has the least chances of any changes Epicor would make. Pete, you're living a dream. Trust us. Live the dream, dude, but trust us. When you do an upgrade, we've seen them get stomped on, get hidden, and it's not happy. Put them on their own tab if at all possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, so in that particular instance, I've seen it where your group box is drawn on top of an existing panel that Epicor has there, and that existing panel has a GUID. That group box gets added as a child to that GUID. If Epicor in their next version regenerates the GUID for that panel, then your group box is completely gone. When you try to load the customization on the upgrade, you won't even see it. You just poof, and you got to go into the XML and change the parent GUID to match the new panel GUID. It's painful. So if you make your own custom panels, then they're your GUIDs, and ostensibly Epicor won't touch them.
Yep.
But to add to that, sometimes I don't really do the new tab because I want it to flow. Like if I go to order detail sheet, I want it to be there, right? It's if it's related to that. Let's say you're doing something with price lists, and there's a little on the order detail. There's a section with price lists on the bottom. And I will still put it there, and yeah, it's a little bit more work, but it would be weird if I would go switch to another tab or something just for like, oh, there's just one drop down over there. It's like, so I do try to be as close as the flow. What I don't do is, to add to that is, I try not to hide Epicore's controls. You know, somebody says, well, we're going to hide all this. And then what happens even with that is someone comes and says, well, Epicore cannot do this. See, there's no option. Yeah, because it's hidden. So I usually leave Epicore stuff all alone and just train the user on, don't touch that checkbox. You know, this is what it does, train them. And if you need it, you can use it. If you don't touch it. Instead of, let's just hide it so he doesn't click it. Until the day comes, he needs it. It's like, oh man, I wish Epicore could do this. And they forget because they haven't seen that option, you know.
I
think the
Calvin
only
ran
ones I
it.
ever hide are on the UD tables and user forms. I'll hide the Epicor ones because I want only mine to be visible on a UD or a custom, a truly custom form.
Yeah. That's an exception there. Yep.
And I think Calvin ran into something similar where you went to a customer and the people were wanting all these customizations built, and he said, "This is base product. Let's go into this menu." Oh, you don't have the menu because you were never given access. No wonder you're doing this in Excel and this over in Access and this over here. So the people never knew functionality was there because all the menus were gone.
Yep. The common one is on the order entry. There's that one down the bottom says counter sale, and sometimes you hide it to get another area for another group box. And then someone says, "Well, Epicor, I don't know how to do counter sales," and yeah, it's hidden. So usually just leave it alone, and also at the same time try to not work on a huge monitor, because just think of your users, they're probably on the 1920 times something resolution, because you might be like, oh, I got all this real estate. You don't have all that real estate on even worse, you go to an MES station, they're still on 1024 by 800, whatever the resolution is. And then it's like, well, every time we got to scroll. And so just keep that in mind. So try not to hide stuff and try to work around.
I got that problem. Also, I got my 5 monitors here and nobody else has that.
That's another big gotcha. If you do customize on a specific monitor and you hit sometimes save, it will save the positions of your form in the custom XML. And then your form is like shows up just a little tiny every time. So what you want to do is every time I just go to custom XML editor and just clean up anything you didn't customize, because even if you touch a control just to see the properties, like I just want to see what they have here, Epicor will say, oh, you customize it. Let me store all the position, the width, the height, the color. So just keep that in mind before you think you're done with the layer. Just go and clean up everything you kind of know you didn't touch. It'll keep creeping up.
Okay. Simon says, I've been thinking lately that a totally separate database for all customizations, although that would be a big change to the architecture.
Why?
Database?
And I think he's talking about where Jose had said CSG had built some custom items into the Epicor database. This is kind of related to that, where he wants to put all his customizations in a separate database so he doesn't potentially run into that. And that's actually for like custom reporting and stuff. That's actually what I recommend people do, is put anything you do that's querying the Epicor database, if it's not using a BAQ, if you're writing like an SSRS from scratch, put that query in a separate database, because you just don't want to take that risk that someday they may need to delete everything and replace it with their own stuff. And it sounds like they finally did on you, Jose. And I just did it out of protection. You know, you don't want to damage their stuff. If you do put stuff like that into the database and you ever need to send it up to support's going to see that and go, well, what else did you change in our database? You may not have done anything, but now it raises that question and they have to do that extra research, which may make their job more difficult to try and find your original issue, because they may be chasing something that's not really there, wondering if you've made other changes.
Yep, and Simon has a follow-up question. That's moving things to pilot or to test or another data, then okay, everything is now broken. If you put on your company configuration table or on the site a connection string to that other database, then you just have one place to update, and that updates all of your code references as well.
And we've actually encouraged people to develop, if you're going to move like from production to test or production to pilot, have a SQL script that goes in and updates the common things, like where's the location of my SSRS reports, turn on or off your task agent, turn on or off enterprise search, rename the companies, things like that. So it's obvious that you're in a different environment. And that comes, once you develop that script, and Nathan Anderson's got a sample script out there that I think he's willing to share, or at least he did with several of us. It's very helpful, quick to run, and you don't have to go into all those different areas to make those changes.
Yep.
And it may take you half an hour to make those changes in the UI. You run the script and you're done in a minute.
Yep, definitely have a script when you do copy your database from production to dev, for example, that you go update the printers, like, or you're notifying suppliers every time you do an ACH remittance. Guess what? They're still going to get notifications if your SMTP is there, and you're going to keep printing test checks to finance. And like suddenly you open your home mailbox, you got all this money in there. It's like, what's that? So, and even like, for example, when we did Maker, we would replace the signature of the CEO, CFO or COO with fake void or something. So it's not just a copy from production to dev, but make sure you update your Valera to their development URL so you don't get billed for, hammering in 1,000 sales orders. Like, and because you're still reporting, so update printers and other things, paths where files are being outputted and so on.
So you're taking fun out of the job security of having to go in one by one to do it all manually.
I know. That's what Jose likes to do.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, though, how do you do? We can do that with print routings, and we, because a lot of those are now email.
Yeah.
Make specific emails. I don't think there's a way you have to do that.
So not right now. The only way, we just disable them for now, and then we tell the developer, if you need to mess with it, be careful, because it's just like a BPM. It's in the source code, the widgets and stuff. So you kind of cannot update that. Jose knows how. He doesn't want to tell me how, but so you're right. So some of the stuff that we cannot, like the advanced print routing, we just kind of disable. And or another thing we've been kind of discussing is, can we just put a different SMTP relay that instead of going out, you just kind of bounce it to the Epicor development at our team. So it's no matter, I can still leave all the functionality, but it'll just come always to me or the development team. So maybe something like that.
Or change the email address you send from that says, rather than being Epicor 10 production, say this is a test message from the test system.
Could you do something with that is live marker?
No, that's what I was looking at. It doesn't show in the print routing.
Oh,
that's
okay.
I literally just thought about that. I was like, oh, maybe you can, but no, it doesn't show you that at all in the print routing conditions. What we do is the SMTP hack.
Yeah, SMTP hack.
What we do is the SMTP hack. So for our development environments, we just take the SMTP off, so no emails go out. Now, if you have to test email, obviously you have to put it back, but that makes sure that we don't accidentally send stuff to customers when we don't.
Or you put another SMTP relay that overrides, like says, oh, I want to send this to Jose. It'll say, nope, I'm going to change his email and send it to you. Like like a global, so you can still have all the email functionality. That's another option. Yep.
Okay. What did we leave off here? I think Simon's referring to also looking at external service registration service IDs, like the Valera that you talked about. And he has a couple of BAQs to obfuscate email addresses.
Yep. You can just change them to Calvin's email address, all of them. Yep. And then, stuff like that. We just overwrite and just put an email address or blank them out and change printers. And one thing that I do see people do, like they'll create a BPM and it's going to write out, let's say, a CSV, and they'll put the path in the code. You cannot update that automatically. So what I do is I have a tab called custom modules on company config, and I always just create them on the XAssist table, and I'll make my own little modules. So when you do the database copies, I kind of just make sure that our DB admin knows, here's the new UD fields, these are paths, can you update them to the dev folder? Let's make one. So the production would have one, and make sure the scripts are updating. So you're not writing to production, or you're printing a label like you're doing a stock, whatever. You're printing a label, you're doing a part transaction, and suddenly production gets all these labels, like all day coming out, and you don't notice it.
I'm on the phone, honey.
Oh, so just keep it maintained. Don't hard code it. You won't be able to change it. Keep, what do you do? UD codes or UD columns. So
Sorry about that. Hashtag pandemic.
12600 has the is live checkbox in company maintenance, Pete, and that I think is what Jose was looking into.
So the is live is in is it in admin console, and then they added the company maintenance as a visual? Just can't remember.
Company maintenance.
Company maintenance, yep.
And I think you can use that on like BPMs.
Yep.
It's available in BPMs, but you were saying it's not available in print routing.
Correct. So in a BAQ you can use it. It's hidden, just so you guys know, it was on the main BAQ screen. Now it's under actions, execution parameters, and it became a parameter kind of. It's actually a little checkbox in that tiny window where you can turn off the timeout limit and so on. But unfortunately, most people won't benefit from that unless they have SQL Enterprise and they have read-only databases and the main database.
I can see it come in handy for us. I mean, we operated in 3 different development environments, plus a test environment. We copy them weekly sometimes.
Yeah.
So for us, having that, being able to use that as live checkbox everywhere would be super handy.
Yes. Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Okay, any other Stump the Chump questions going on? I know we're running a little over into the next session.